Welcome to Pathlight English. We are so glad you're joining us for this deep dive today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here.
So picture this. You walk into the interview room, right? Your resume is just flawless.
Oh, yeah. Perfectly formatted. Sitting right there on the desk.
Exactly. Perfectly formatted. You've spent hours, maybe even days, researching the company's recent projects and their core values.
Right. You are totally prepared.
You are. You're wearing your best professional outfit. You sit down feeling that perfect mix of adrenaline and preparation. And the interviewer smiles, leans back in their chair, looks you right in the eye, and asks 5 terrifying words.
So tell me about yourself.
Yes. And instantly your mind just goes completely, utterly blank.
It's just the universal experience, isn't it? For every job seeker out there.
It really is. You prepare for the complex, highly technical questions. But when you're faced with the most open-ended, predictable prompt in the English language, your brain just initiates a full-scale retreat.
Yeah, suddenly every professional accomplishment you've ever had just completely evaporates. And you're sitting there fighting the urge to tell them, where you went to kindergarten.
Right. You're sitting there thinking, wait, do they want to know my hobbies? Do they want a chronological walkthrough of my resume? Am I supposed to talk about my dog?
It really feels like you've been handed a massive blank canvas.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And someone has shoved a single paintbrush into your hand and said, you have exactly 5 seconds to paint a masterpiece. Go.
And what happens? We panic. It just becomes this conversational freefall.
A total freefall. We start rambling, over-explaining, and just desperately hoping the interviewer will interrupt us.
Which, of course, they usually don't. They just kind of watch you scramble.
Yeah, they really do. It's awful.
And there is a really fascinating psychological reason why this specific question induces so much panic, especially, if you are interviewing in a second language, operating at that B2 or C1 English level.
Right, because it's not about the vocabulary, is it?
No, not at all. The panic doesn't come from a lack of vocabulary. It comes from the complete absence of structure.
Okay, let's unpack that immediately. Because why does a lack of structure trigger that specific kind of panic? On the surface, tell me about yourself sounds like a gift.
It does. It sounds like an opportunity to say whatever you want.
But that infinite freedom is actually the trap, right?
Exactly. Human beings, we crave structure under pressure. So when the interviewer leaves the prompt completely open, they are dramatically increasing your cognitive load.
Oh, that makes so much sense. Your brain is suddenly forced to perform 2 complex tasks simultaneously.
Right. First, you have to categorize an entire lifetime of experiences. And second, you have to filter out what is actually relevant to this total stranger sitting across from you.
Because you don't know what they value yet, so everything feels equally important.
Precisely. And that explains the rambling. If everything feels important, you try to say everything. You throw every detail against the wall to see what sticks.
Which is just a disaster. But if we can fundamentally reframe how we view the intent behind this question, we can completely eliminate that panic, right?
We really can. And that actually brings us to the foundational rule of our deep dive today. This is the core message we are going to explore for you.
The golden rule.
Yes. A strong interview answer to this question is not a life story. It is a clear, highly curated, professional snapshot.
A professional snapshot. I love that. Not a sweeping cinematic epic, not a biography, just a snapshot.
Exactly, just the snapshot.
But wait, if I'm only giving them a snapshot, are I risking leaving out something amazing I did 10 years ago? Why is curation better than just being comprehensive?
Because interviewers are not looking for a comprehensive audit of your existence. They just aren't. They are testing a very specific, high-level set of communication skills.
So they want to see if you can show structure in your own thoughts.
Exactly that. They are testing your ability to curate information and demonstrate clarity under pressure. By thinking of it as a snapshot, you relieve yourself of the immense burden of summarizing your whole life.
Oh, that's such a relief to hear.
All right, think about a photographer. A photographer doesn't capture the entire world. They put a frame around one highly relevant subject, and they blur out the background. You need to do the exact same thing with your career.
That is a massive paradigm shift. You aren't failing if you leave things out. Leaving things out is the entire point. Curation is the actual goal here.
It really is the goal.
So our mission for this deep dive is to build that perfect high-resolution snapshot for you. We're going to look at a highly structured English framework drawn directly from our source materials from Pathlight English.
And we're going to examine the psychology behind it, too.
Right. We're exploring how to open the answer, and set a baseline of authority, how to show your strengths without crossing into arrogance, how to connect those strengths directly to the interviewer's needs, and finally, how to decisively end your answer so you don't end up, trailing off into an awkward silence.
And the beauty of this specific language toolkit is that it allows you to take control of the narrative from your very first breath.
That's powerful. You aren't just surviving the prompt, you are architecting the rest of the interview.
Exactly. You are laying the tracks for where the conversation goes next.
So, the clock starts ticking the moment they finish asking, "Tell me about yourself." What comes out of your mouth in those first few crucial seconds? Because it feels like if you fumble the opening, you spend the next 10 minutes just trying to dig yourself out of a hole.
You really do. The first few seconds dictate the tone of the entire interaction. Psychologically, human beings make incredibly rapid judgments about competence, confidence, and authority.
Right, the halo effect.
Exactly, the halo effect. If you sound authoritative in your first sentence, the listener subconsciously assumes you are competent in your actual work.
But if you start with hesitation, or if you start too broad, the interviewer has to work harder to figure out where to place you in their mental filing cabinet.
And we want to do that categorization work for them immediately, make it easy for them.
We want to hand them the foundation on a silver platter. And the sources provide a specific grammatical structure to do exactly that. The phrase is, "I have a background in."
Yes, I have a background in.
Let's look at the mechanics of this. You use it to introduce your field or your general area of expertise, but you aren't necessarily naming a specific past job title, are you?
No, you aren't. You are naming the domain you operate in. For instance, you might say, "I have a background in customer support and team coordination."
Okay, notice what you aren't doing there. You aren't saying, "I was a customer support specialist level 2 at XYZ Corp from 2019 to 2022.
Right, because that's what the resume is for. They can read that piece of paper.
But let me push back on the phrasing itself for a second. I have a background in. Why not just use the simpler, more common phrasing? Like, why not just sit down and say, "I worked in customer support," or "I worked with training teams"?
I mean, that's what most people say, right?
Yeah. It doesn't "I worked in" communicate the exact same factual information?
Factually, yes, it does. But sociolinguistically, it communicates a very different level of authority. This is where the nuance of upper intermediate and advanced English really separates the average candidate from the exceptional one.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I worked in, or I worked with, is an action. It describes a temporary task that you performed in the past. It sounds like something you just happened to do.
It doesn't define your professional identity.
Exactly. It's an action versus an identity.
That's a crucial distinction. Saying, "I worked in retail" sounds like a job I had just to pay the bills.
Precisely. But when you say, "I have a background in," you are implying a deep foundational expertise. Think about the spatial metaphor of the word background.
Like a landscape.
Yes, it implies a landscape. You are telling the listener, this is the terrain from which I come. This is the solid foundation upon which all my current skills are built.
It frames you as an expert who possesses a domain of knowledge, not just, a worker bee who completed a checklist of tasks. You are claiming ownership of that professional space.
I love the idea of planting a flag, "I have a background in," is a subtle way of saying, this is my territory. It commands immediate respect.
It really does.
Yeah.
So we've set the baseline, we've established the foundation, but we can't just leave them in the past, right?
No, absolutely not. We have to bring the interviewer into the present reality of who we are today.
Because a foundation is static. It tells them where you've been, but hiring managers are far more interested in momentum.
They want to know the trajectory of your career. Are you moving forward or are you stagnating?
Which brings us to the next structural piece of the opening. Once you establish the background, you transition by saying, "Most recently, I have been focusing on."
Yes. So the full opening sequence becomes, "I have a background in customer support. Most recently, I have been focusing on improving client communication."
Let's analyze that second half. Why is focusing on the operative phrase here?
It comes down to the use of the present perfect continuous tense. Have been focusing.
Ah, grammar time.
Yeah, a little bit of grammar. In English, this tense indicates an ongoing dynamic process that started in the past and continues right into the present moment.
So it isn't a closed chapter.
Exactly. It is a living, breathing part of your professional life. But beyond the grammar, the word focusing itself is incredibly strategic.
It feels very intentional. Like if I compare it to saying, most recently my boss had me doing client communication, or most recently my job has been about client communication, those make me sound like a passive recipient of tasks.
Exactly. They make you sound like you are just letting work happen to you. But when you say, I have been focusing on, you are signaling autonomy.
You are actively directing your professional energy.
Yes, you are making choices about where to place your attention. It projects a sense of leadership over your own career, even if you are applying for an entry-level position.
Wow, that's so true.
It tells the interviewer, I engage my brain at work. I don't just react, I focus.
That is such a compelling way to present yourself. You are totally in the driver's seat. So let's look at the snapshot we've painted so far.
The first 5 seconds are over.
Right. You've walked in. You haven't rambled about your hometown. Instead, you've confidently established your broad expertise, and you've shown dynamic, active momentum.
The foundation is rock solid. You have their respect.
But respect alone doesn't get you hired, does it? Now you need to show them your specific value.
And you need to do it without alienating them, which is honestly where many highly competent candidates stumble.
Yes, this moves us into the next phase of the answer, which is all about showing your strengths. Or, as we often see it described in modern professional coaching, executing the humble flex.
Ah, the humble flex.
Yes. Now, the challenge of self-praise is universal, but it feels particularly fraught in an interview setting. For many of you listening, depending on your cultural background, the very idea of bragging during a formal meeting feels deeply unnatural.
It can feel arrogant, boastful, or just profoundly uncomfortable.
It's a massive cultural hurdle.
It really is. In many cultures, humility is prioritized above all else. You are taught to let your work speak for itself.
Right, like if you are good, others will notice and praise you.
Exactly. But the reality of the Western corporate interview process, particularly in English-speaking environments, is that if you do not advocate for yourself, literally no one else is going to do it for you.
The interviewer doesn't know you. They cannot guess your hidden talents.
Right. If you don't put it on the table, it doesn't exist.
But that creates a real tension. I mean, how do we articulate our value? How do we sell our skills without crossing that invisible line into arrogance? Because nobody wants to hire someone who sounds completely self-absorbed.
And this is where the English language offers a very specific, highly diplomatic structural tool to navigate this exact tension.
Ooh, tell us.
It allows you to present a strength as an objective fact rather than a boast. The phrase is, one of my strengths is.
Okay. One of my strengths is.
For example, you could say, one of my strengths is explaining complex information clearly, or one of my strengths is staying calm under pressure.
Let's really dig into those two words, one of. Because if I just say, my strength is staying calm under pressure, it feels a bit blunt. It feels like I'm declaring my one single superpower.
Yeah, it does.
And if I say, I am incredibly good at staying calm, well, now I'm definitely bragging. Why does adding one of completely neutralize the arrogance?
Because it is a brilliant linguistic shield. When you say one of my strengths is, you are implicitly suggesting to the listener that you actually possess a wide variety of strengths.
Oh, that is so clever.
Right. You're saying you have a whole repertoire of skills, an entire toolbox of professional competencies. However, out of respect for the interviewer's time, and because you are demonstrating your ability to curate information, you are humbly selecting just one specific strength to share right now.
Wow. It's almost a subliminal message. It says, I have many great qualities, but I'm polite enough to only highlight this one.
Exactly. It conveys a quiet, grounded confidence rather than a loud, insecure boast. It's the ultimate diplomatic phrasing.
It is. It really is.
But, and this is a critical caveat that our sources heavily emphasize, there is a strict usage rule attached to this. You must always, without exception, connect that stated strength to a specific example.
You have to prove it.
Yes, a strength without an example is not a fact. It is merely an opinion. And in an interview, your unverified opinion about yourself carries absolutely zero weight.
Which brings us to the mandatory partner phrase, for example. It sounds so basic, but it is the hinge upon which your entire credibility swings.
It really is the anchor.
You say, one of my strengths is explaining complex information clearly. For example, I help reduce response time by improving our message templates.
Or, one of my strengths is staying calm under pressure. For example, I train new team members on our support process during our busiest quarter.
If we look at the cognitive science of how the brain processes information, human beings are terrible at remembering abstract concepts.
We really are. If you just say, I am a good communicator, The interviewer's brain has nothing to latch onto. It is an empty vessel of a phrase.
But the moment you say, for example, you signal a shift from an abstract claim to a concrete narrative.
I always think of this like a courtroom drama.
Oh, I love this analogy.
Imagine a defense attorney standing up, delivering this booming, dramatic opening statement. They look the jury dead in the eye and shout, "My client is innocent. They're a pillar of the community. They have an impeccable background."
And then the lawyer just sits down and rests their case.
Exactly. The jury would be completely bewildered. They'd be sitting there thinking, okay, that was a nice speech, but where is the evidence? Where is the alibi? Where are the witnesses?
Right. You can't just refuse to show the jury the evidence. The opening statement might get their attention, but the evidence is what actually wins the verdict.
Yes. When you claim a strength in an interview, you are the lawyer making an opening statement. When you use the phrase, for example, you are finally presenting the evidence. You're transitioning from telling to showing.
And by showing, you are forcing the interviewer's brain to simulate your past experience.
That's the magic of it. When you say, I improved our message templates, they can instantly visualize a document. They can understand the mechanism of your success.
You are painting a verifiable picture. You aren't just asking them to trust you. You are proving your competence beyond a reasonable doubt.
You really are.
Okay, so let's pause and look at our snapshot again. We've opened smoothly. We've established a foundation of authority.
We've executed the humble flex by naming a strength.
And we've backed it up with concrete, undeniable evidence. At this point, a lot of candidates think, nailed it. I'm done. I've proved I'm great.
They do, yeah.
But here's where it gets incredibly tricky. And this is the trap that catches so many talented, experienced professionals. You can have the best background, the most active focus, and the greatest evidence in the world.
But if those strengths don't apply to the company's immediate needs, the interviewer literally does not care.
Ouch. But it's true. This is the most common point of failure for advanced speakers. They get so comfortable talking about their own past that they forget the most important person in the room, the hiring manager.
Right. We have to make a massive psychological shift here. We have to move out of the past and into the shared future.
Which brings us to the pivot.
Yes. The art of the pivot is fundamentally about changing the subject of the sentence from me to us.
Let's talk about the reality of the hiring manager for a second. They are not sitting in that room because they enjoy hearing autobiographies.
Not at all. They are sitting in that room because they have a specific set of operational problems that are causing them stress. And they have a budget to hire someone to make those problems go away.
They are looking for a painkiller.
Exactly. They need a painkiller. Your answer so far has been about building your credibility. Now, you must explicitly state why your specific history makes you the correct painkiller for their present context.
You are transitioning from being a job candidate presenting a resume to being a professional proposing a strategic partnership.
And the phrase that acts as the bridge for this pivot is remarkably simple, yet it does so much heavy lifting. The phrase is, that is why this role interests me.
That is why this role interests me. You use this immediately after giving your example.
Right. So you say, for example, I improved our message templates. That is why this role interests me.
I want to look closely at the grammar here because it operates like a magic trick.
How so?
Think about the word that. It's a pronoun, right? But in this context, it refers back to everything you just spent the last 60 seconds talking about.
Oh, I see what you mean.
It takes your entire background, your ongoing focus, your specific strength, and your concrete example, bundles them all up into a single package called that, and drops it directly into the lap of the interviewer.
Wow. Yes.
That is why this role interests me. It proves that your presence in the room is not an accident. You aren't just applying to every job on the internet. You are here for a highly specific, logical reason.
It creates a seamless, airtight, logical flow. It builds a persuasive argument in the interviewer's mind. A, my proven background, plus B, my demonstrated strengths, inevitably results in C, my presence in this interview for this exact position.
It removes any ambiguity about your motivations.
It really does. However, the pivot isn't entirely complete with just this one sentence. Once you've connected your past to their present, you need to project forward into what you hope to achieve together.
Which leads us to the next phrase in the toolkit. I am looking for a role where I can.
Right. For example, I am looking for a role where I can grow and contribute to a strong team. Or, I am looking for a role where I can use both my technical and communication skills.
The usage note in our source material is very explicit here. Keep it positive and strictly connected to the position at hand.
This is where so many candidates accidentally reveal misaligned priorities.
Let's talk about that. Because when an interviewer asks, "What are you looking for?"
Yeah.
it is so easy to interpret that as a question about your personal desires.
Yeah, candidates start getting a little self-serving.
Right. They might say, "Well, I'm looking for a role with a better work-life balance," or "I'm looking for a role where the manager will promote me quickly."
And suddenly the entire conversation is about what the company can do for you. It sounds extractive. It sounds like you are there to take value from the company rather than add value to it.
But this specific phrasing, "I'm looking for a role where I can," acts as a guardrail.
It does. It naturally forces you to describe an action that you will take for them, where I can contribute, where I can apply my skills, where I can solve complex problems.
It reframes your personal ambition.
That
It shows you have drive, but it channels that drive correctly.
you are essentially telling the hiring manager, my primary professional ambition is to solve the exact problems your department is facing.
That is music to an interviewer's ears. You are aligning your desires with their operational needs. My ambition is to solve your problems.
If our listeners can internalize that one mindset shift, their interview success rate will just skyrocket. It fundamentally changes the dynamic in the room.
Okay, so we've walked through the door. We've confidently established our foundation. We've gracefully proved our strengths. We've flawlessly pivoted to connect our goals to the company's needs. We've delivered a stellar answer. We are inches from the finish line.
And this is precisely where the wheels usually fall off the wagon.
Oh, it is agonizing to watch. The ending is where everything unravels. Rambling at the tail end of an answer is such a common trap, and it undoes all the hard work you just put in.
It really does. You've given a great response, you've hit all your key points, but you just don't know how to cut the microphone.
The danger of the trailing thought is incredibly real. It happens because of the psychological pressure of the room.
Yeah, you finish your logical thought, where I can contribute to a strong team, and you stop speaking. But the interviewer doesn't immediately respond.
Maybe they are taking notes. Or perhaps they're just processing what you said. So there is a moment of silence.
And silence in an interview room is deafening.
It feels like a vacuum, pulling words out of your mouth. You see them looking down at their notepad and your brain screams, "Oh no, I didn't say enough. They aren't convinced. Keep talking." And the panic returns. So you start appending disjointed thoughts. And also, I really enjoy working with diverse teams. And I consider myself a very hard worker. So, yeah. You can physically feel the energy and authority draining out of the room with every extra word.
You are diluting your own excellent answer with weak filler.
You're watering down the soup. You had a rich, condensed snapshot, and now you're just pouring extra water into it. We need a mechanism to signal to the interviewer, and honestly, to signal to our own anxious brains, that the answer is officially, successfully over.
We need an airtight seal. And our framework provides two final phrases that work in tandem to accomplish exactly that.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is a summarization tool. The phrase is simply, in short.
In short, just 2 words.
Let's look at the example sentence provided. In short, I bring practical experience, clear communication, and a strong interest in this role.
That is a masterclass in brevity.
Yeah.
But I want to explore the psychology of this. Why do those 2 tiny words carry so much weight at the end of a 2-minute answer?
Yeah.
Doesn't it feel a bit repetitive if you just told them all this stuff?
It might feel repetitive to you because, well, you've lived your career, but you have to consider the cognitive load of the interviewer. We discussed earlier how human memory is flawed, especially in high-stress, high-stakes environments. The interviewer is listening to you, yes. But they are also simultaneously analyzing your body language, comparing your answers to the candidate they interviewed an hour ago, thinking about the next question on their sheet.
And maybe even worrying about an email they have to send to their boss.
Exactly. They cannot hold every detail of your 2-minute narrative in their working memory.
They are experiencing cognitive overload too.
They are. There is a well-documented psychological principle called the recency effect, which states that human beings tend to remember the last thing they hear far more clearly than the information presented in the middle.
Okay, so when you use the phrase, in short, you are actively leveraging that recency effect.
Yes. In short, acts like an auditory highlighter pen.
I love that. It clears the interviewer's mental RAM.
It does. When they hear those 2 words, their brain subconsciously registers, okay, the narrative is over. Here is the executive summary. This is the core takeaway.
You are essentially dictating exactly what they should write down on their evaluation sheet.
Practical experience, clear communication, strong interest. You are doing the synthesizing for them, which, ironically, is a final demonstration of your advanced communication skills.
It is incredibly considerate. You are handing them the bullet points of your own presentation so they don't have to work so hard.
Yeah.
But we still need one final sentence. We've summarized, but we need to gracefully exit the stage and hand the conversational baton back to them without it feeling abrupt.
Which brings us to the final phrase in the toolkit. I would be excited to bring that experience here.
Let me say that again, paying attention to the cadence. I would be excited to bring that experience here. I absolutely love the definitive full-stop energy of this sentence.
It has a great rhythm to it.
It does. When you speak that line, your vocal pitch naturally drops at the end of the word here. It signals absolute finality. It tells the room, I have concluded my thought. I stand by it. I am finished speaking.
It eliminates the awkward silence entirely because it serves as a polite but firm handoff. But notice the tone it strikes.
It is positive. You are expressing excitement and eagerness. But it is not desperate.
Exactly. It is not overly emotional. You aren't saying, I really, really hope you hire me. You are simply stating a confident, professional readiness to apply your proven skills in their specific environment.
It's the perfect ending. It practically invites them to ask their next question. You have confidently passed the baton, and you can just sit back and smile.
It's a great feeling when you nail that landing.
Okay, so for you listening, we have now painstakingly walked through the entire 4-section framework. We've examined the psychology and the phrasing of the opening foundation, the humble flex of showing strengths with evidence, the strategic pivot to their needs, and finally, sticking the landing with a clear, authoritative summary.
But knowing the theory, understanding the psychology is only half the battle.
That's the truth. In a second language, theory often evaporates when the adrenaline hits. We need to internalize how these phrases actually feel in practice.
Which is why the transition from comprehension to execution is so critical. We need to hear the difference between a functional answer and an exceptional one.
This brings us to a highly practical part of our deep dive, the transformation section. We are going to pressure test this framework. I am going to read a series of simple sentences.
These are the kinds of sentences that are grammatically correct. They might sit at an A2 or B1 level, but they lack professional polish.
They are the sentences you blurt out when you are panicking. And I want you, the listener, to pay attention to how small and uncertain these simple phrases feel. Then, our expert here is going to transform that thought into a better sentence using the structural tools we've just discussed.
Elevating the language to a solid B2-C1 professional standard.
All right, let's dive in with our first scenario, the opening. You want to tell them about your past. Here is the simple version. I worked in support.
And here is the better version. I have a background in customer support and client communication.
Let's analyze the emotional shift there. When I say I worked in support, it feels so narrow. It feels like I'm describing a summer job I had in high school. It diminishes my own value before the interview has even really started.
It does because it restricts your identity to a past action. But let's look at the better version. I have a background in customer support and client communication.
Notice how we didn't just change the verb. We expanded the scope of the domain.
Right. By adding and client communication, you are instantly broadening your professional identity. You aren't just someone who answered support tickets. You are someone who understands the broader architecture of how a company talks to its clients.
You have elevated yourself from a participant to a domain expert. The vocabulary change literally alters the power dynamic in the room. Fantastic.
Ready for the next one?
Yes. Let's move to the second scenario. You need to tell them what you are good at. And I hear the simple version all the time. Here's the simple version. I am good at problems.
The better version. One of my strengths is solving problems calmly.
Oh man, this simple version, I am good at problems. It almost hurts to say out loud. It is so unpolished.
It is.
And honestly, it's ambiguous. I am good at problems. Does that mean you cause them? Does it mean you find them? It lacks all precision.
And in advanced English communication, precision is the ultimate marker of fluency. The simple version is a blunt instrument. The better version, one of my strengths is solving problems calmly, is a scalpel.
It really is.
Notice the syntax we're using. First, the diplomatic shield, one of my strengths. Then we use the gerund solving, which frames the strength as an active, ongoing process. And finally, the master stroke, we add the adverb calmly.
I wanted to ask you about that adverb.
Yeah.
Why does calmly make such an outsized difference in how the sentence is perceived?
Because it transitions the statement from what you do to how you do it. Any candidate in the world can claim they solve problems. It's the most cliché claim on a resume. But when you add calmly, you are providing emotional and behavioral context. You are describing your professional temperament. As an interviewer, when I hear the word calmly, I can instantly visualize a crisis scenario.
Oh, I see it.
I can picture a day when the servers crash, the clients are furious, and everyone else in the office is panicking. But in that visualization, you are the one sitting at your desk, breathing steadily and methodically fixing the issue.
That single adverb paints an incredibly vivid picture. It is worth its weight in gold. It tells a story without having to tell a story. That is brilliant.
Let's look at the evidence phase.
Okay, moving on to the third scenario. You need to provide evidence. You need to prove your strength. Simple version, I did training.
The better version. For example, I train new team members on our support process.
Again, I did training is grammatically fine, but it is a black box. Did you train dogs? Did you train for a marathon? Did you receive the training from management, or did you give the training to others?
The ambiguity leaves the interviewer guessing, and confused interviewers do not extend job offers.
They really don't.
Exactly. The simple version forces the interviewer to ask follow-up questions just to understand the basic facts of your experience, which wastes valuable time. The better version is robust because it anticipates those questions and provides 3 critical pieces of structural information up front.
Let's break those 3 pieces down.
First, it provides the structural context, for example. This tells the brain, here comes the evidence.
Right.
Second, it clearly identifies the audience, new team members. This establishes who you are interacting with and implies a level of seniority or mentorship.
And the third?
Third, it specifies the subject matter on our support process. In one single sentence, you have provided a complete, verifiable micro-story that definitively proves your competence. Context, audience, subject matter. It leaves no room for confusion.
It is airtight. All right, let's look at the fourth scenario. This is the pivot. You need to connect your background to their company. Simple version. I want this job.
The better version. That is why this role interests me.
I have to laugh at the bluntness of the simple version. I want this job. It's incredibly honest, sure. We all want the job.
We do.
But sitting in a formal interview and saying, I want this job, feels almost aggressive, doesn't it? It feels less like a professional discussion and more like a demand.
It feels aggressive because it lacks professional distance. In a corporate context, particularly in English-speaking business cultures, you want to frame your desire as an intellectual and strategic match, not merely an emotional want or a desperate financial need.
When you say, I want this job, it sounds entirely based on your internal feelings. It's all about my ego.
But when you use the better phrasing, that is why this role interests me, you are implying a process of evaluation. You are telling them that you have objectively assessed the parameters of the role, you have objectively evaluated your own skill set, and you've logically concluded that there is a mutual benefit to be found here.
It elevates the entire conversation. You are no longer a subordinate begging for a paycheck. You are an equal partner identifying a strategic fit.
It replaces raw emotion with intellectual curiosity.
That is a massive upgrade in how you are perceived. You are treating the interview like a peer-to-peer consultation. Okay, let's look at the final scenario, the ending. You've answered the question and you need to stop talking. Simple version. That is all.
The better version. In short, I bring experience, clear communication, and a strong interest in this role.
I know you shuddered a little bit when I read that is all. It physically hurts to hear a great answer end that way.
I really did. That is all is the verbal equivalent of a deflating balloon. It sounds like a sudden, total loss of energy and confidence.
Like giving up.
Imagine running a grueling marathon, pacing yourself perfectly for 26 miles, and then just 1 meter before the finish line, you just stop, shrug your shoulders, and walk away. Saying, that is all, dismisses everything you just spent 2 minutes carefully explaining.
It signals to the interviewer, well, I guess I'm out of things to say, so make of that what you will. It is the ultimate anticlimax.
But the better version. In short, I bring experience, clear communication, and a strong interest in this role. That is a victory lap.
You are confidently striding across the finish line with your hands in the air. You are taking control of the narrative, reminding them of the absolute best parts of your answer and leaving them with a powerful, lingering final impression.
And that transformation from a hesitant, deflated that is all to a structured, confident executive summary is the entire goal of this framework. You are shifting from hoping the interviewer understands you to ensuring that they do.
Well, we have covered an immense amount of ground today. We have dug deep into the psychology, the sociolinguistics, and the exact grammar of how to master the most terrifying question in the business world.
We really have.
For you listening, we've essentially handed you a structural blueprint for the first 3 minutes of your next interview. But to make sure these phrases really cement themselves in your memory, it's time for our rapid review.
The toolkit recap.
Yes, I am going to lead a recap of the crucial language toolkit we covered in this deep dive. As I say each phrase, I want you to mentally picture yourself sitting in that interview chair, making eye contact, and delivering these lines with total, unshakable confidence.
Visualize it.
Here is your conversational toolkit. First, to establish your foundation. I have a background in.
Second, to show momentum. Most recently, I have been focusing on.
Third, to execute the humble flex. One of my strengths is.
Fourth, to provide the undeniable evidence, for example.
Fifth, to pivot from your past to their future. That is why this role interests me.
Sixth, to align your ambition with their needs. I'm looking for a role where I can.
Seventh, to leverage the recency effect and summarize. In short.
And finally, the perfect definitive sign-off. I would be excited to bring that experience here.
That is an incredibly powerful arsenal of language. But as we all know, knowledge without application is just trivia. So I have a final, highly practical assignment for you, the listener.
Time for some homework.
Yes. Your mission, as soon as this deep dive concludes, is to sit down with a piece of paper and write a 4-sentence answer to the prompt, "Tell me about yourself." I want you to use exactly one phrase from each of the 4 sections we discussed today.
Build your own customized professional snapshot. Do not write a biography. Do not list your hobbies. Write a curated, strategic argument for your own professional competence.
That is the homework. Take that blank canvas, pick up the brush, and paint that 4-sentence masterpiece. And hey, if you found this breakdown helpful and you want to continue refining your professional English, please remember to subscribe to the Pathlight English channel.
We have so many more deep dives into professional communication coming your way.
You absolutely do not want to miss the structural tools that could fundamentally transform your career trajectory.
And before we leave you today, I want to offer a lingering thought to ponder. We've established that a strong interview answer is a clear professional snapshot. If a career is just a series of these curated snapshots, ask yourself, what does your current professional snapshot actually look like to a stranger who just met you today?
Wow, that's a great question.
Is it blurry, unfocused, and cluttered with irrelevant details of your distant past? Or is it sharp, deliberate, and vividly illustrating the specific value you bring to the table right now?
That is such a profound thought to end on. Edit the clutter, sharpen the focus, take control of the narrative. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Grab a pen, write out your 4 sentences, and most importantly, practice them out loud until they feel like second nature. You've got this. We will see you next time.